touch on a few matters of the ministries concerned. The meeting that needs to continue with the Prime Minister on the nationality issue that we had discussions with in a committee meeting. And I expect, as promised by the Prime Minister, to receive the population data of St. Martin. That, when the Prime Minister responded, Madam Chair Lady, was not readily available. I asked about the state of going towards alternative energy, about the multi-annual indicative program of St. Martin by the EU in connection with alternative energy. I repeat, I think it has been asked before, about the status of the SER chairperson. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for responding to my question regarding the cabinet of the Minister Plenipotentiary in The Hague. What the Prime Minister did, Madam Chair Lady, in responding to that was also to get a feel and reaction from our Minister Plenipotentiary. But there again we see where a need for additional persons at that cabinet to assist our residents who either live or happen to be in the Netherlands. And it is a matter of having budget and capacity. I want to continue, Madam Chair Lady, my discussion that I've had with the Prime Minister, both verbally as well as in writing, regarding the statement by the State Secretary on the issue of integrity involving Transparency International on St. Martin and the other CAS countries. And why am I so specific about this item? It is because who know. And fact is that Transparency International has been on St. Martin, has made an assessment on St. Martin, and one of the results of that assessment and other reports commissioned by St. Martin regarding integrity on St. Martin that led to our integrity chamber. I think that's why I'm a little disappointed that the fact that our integrity chamber law, our national ordinance, by the way, for which we had to fight for it to be a national ordinance. Otherwise, it would have been a mutual agreement. It would have been an onderlinge regeling. While the State Secretary himself acknowledged that this is a matter of St. Martin. This is our issue for us to address and for us to solve. So I want to encourage the Prime Minister, Madam Chair Lady, to seek of getting or to get to the evaluation of our integrity chamber. In fact, the proposal from the State Secretary, as communicated to the Prime Minister, should be put with the integrity chamber. I've understood that our request, my request, for the results of the employee survey of the government will be made available and shared with Parliament. I want to understand how we are going to apply. I remember vividly in the Prime Minister's inaugural address for this government, referring to the Disaster Reserve Fund, and that will be put towards infrastructural improvements. And I would like to know the specifics and the plans therefore. Many of my colleagues have addressed the issue of the road network on St. Martin. And I want to thank the Minister for his responses. And I know we're now just making sure that, and we are now, I could continue now. I was just making sure I saw the chair ladies look in terms of sufficient persons here. And I want to thank, as I was saying, Madam Chair Lady, through you, the Minister of Vromi for his responses to my questions regarding the road network. But what I don't understand, and I think it is something that if we don't carefully guard against it, we are going to end up trying to stretch a guilder to more than 100 cents. Meaning, the funding that we have, we're trying to put it in every area, so no area is really structurally dealt with. Responses by the Minister of Romy, reference was made to the Aki Tree Drive in Coal Bay. That, according to what was projected, 300 meters had surfaced for 190,000 guilders. Why would you undertake such a project and you cannot complete the entire road? Are the persons on that road at the lower end more entitled to have the road had surface than those higher up? How could you stop the road halfway? Forget about what the lack of drainage of that road did to the persons lower down in Coal Bay, including myself. Forget about that. But explain me why, if you're going to have surface a road, you're going to do half of the road. Explain me that. Minister of Romy, I am so happy that you have taken up the issue of the administrative sanctioning that is possible. And I think that part of the answer to many of our issues today lie in that possibility. The possibility that can be given to ministries to sanction behavior, to fine behavior. There is a law on administrative sanctions. And specifically for the Ministry of Romy, that law has been put into effect. And so, Minister, I want to encourage you, and I'm going to come to how I believe this can be done, to make use of that possibility. And it's not about what you collect out of it, it is about the behavior that you can deter and restrict because of it. So this bestuurlijke handhavings implementation for Vromi was done in June of 2022. And I encourage the government to use this tool as best as you can, because we have, so many of my colleagues have stated it, getting persons who act in contravention of the law, especially where their behavior is concerned, on the public roads, where garbage is concerned, etc., to go through the criminal part of it is onbegonnen werk, as we would say. Yet the government have in their hands the bestuurlijke handhavings verordening and for Vromi in particular, for which it has been declared in effect. And then I need to add in here, if I can get an update on the monkey project that was put in the hands of the Nature Foundation under the Finance Ministry. And it has to do with the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin. And I know the agreement with respect to INYA and how the government of St. Martin, as per 2027, will be receiving via the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin the portion that St. Martin, respectively Curaçao, will have to pay. And I would like the Minister of Finance to ascertain from the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin how, with a net result in 2023 of less than 150,000 guilders, it's 146, 40-something thousand guilders, that between now and 2027, this can translate in results that would make it possible for St. Martin and Curacao to get dividends sufficiently to pay into the INYA agreement. I want to address the issue of tax reform. And I'm sure many of us, maybe with some envy, have followed the tax reform as taking place on our sister island of Aruba. And I want to encourage our minister, who has a tax reform plan, to follow the process that has been followed on Aruba. So when we see and have seen a couple of weeks ago that Aruba has taken a next tax reform step and lowered income tax, for example, that is based on a decision, a vision of tax reform, and then these incremental steps, including their turnover tax, raising that on one hand, so also going in the direction of indirect taxation, and then now a part on the income tax. And I encourage the Minister of Finance, the vision that the minister has verbalized, Madam Chair Lady, make that the vision and policy going forward of this government, so that the incremental steps that the government has indicated, especially where collection is concerned, especially where the senior citizens are concerned, that step by step these can be implemented while this grandiose plan of tax reform is being worked out. There is another matter that needs to be corrected in the area of profit tax, and that is the correction to that law where foundations and associations are concerned. I would like to know, through you, Madam Chair Lady, from the Minister of Finance and other ministers who might be able to chime in, where do we stand? What has been the results of the research, if I can call it that, into the acting positions in government, overall speaking? Overall speaking. When does the minister believe that her vision for collection, so tax collection reform, can be implemented? To the Minister of TIAT, I've learned, Minister, that at least the design of the beautification for Phillipsburg is getting on the way. And if the points of departure of that design can be shared, what has the one who will now design the beautification of Phillipsburg, what are the points of departure given by the Ministry of TIAT for that design? You know, we sometimes, including myself, feel that St. Martin is the center of the world. And I think in some ways, we are entitled to feel that way. However, the question that we need to ask in the context of where do we go from here, can we become a center in an area that St. Martin is good at and can get better at? What area would that be? Maritime, financial, medical? Can we pick back up the hub center that we used to be? Or can our orange economy be the center? We need to find something that this country is good at and make it better, make it the best. Can't be everything, can't be all of them, but we need to find something to be the center of. I would like to get an explanation. I've heard the answers, and I cannot understand why the lottery decree is still pending if it is at the governor. And in the answers by the government, Madam Chair Lady, it is mentioned for decision making. Nothing is at the governor for decision making. It is the decision of government and then to be signed or not by the governor. Again, from the Minister of VSR, his concurrence, Madam Chair Lady, with my idea, my request for a 1 meal per day for our senior citizens who would be in need of such. Minister concurs. Minister will find out. But again, resources, capacity. Somewhat with concern, because I just could imagine the kind of results that we will receive from the STEP survey. But what caught my attention was the response, Madam Chair Lady, in asking about the STEP survey, that the ministry responded that in as far as the information could be shared. But I think it is detrimental to know what the health profile of this country is. Several of my colleagues have asked about the issue of the HAP, and the minister has responded in his answers what the status is. And so my follow-up question to that is that about AHAP? You know, so the phenomenon of a HAP, or is it about the establishment in Simpson Bay that you're going to have a review done, you're going to have different stakeholders coming together? So is it about a huisartsenpraktijk in general with the kind of hours at the location in Simpson Bay, or is it about that facility in particular that this kind of investigative approach is going to be, or maybe has already been applied? Many of my colleagues have also touched on the matter of immigration. And I asked the Prime Minister, I believe it was, and now I'm asking the Minister of Justice. And I don't want to ask, Minister, are you aware of, or have you read it, or do you know it? No, I do want to ask, are you aware of and have you been informed of the Migration Needs Assessment St. Martin and that report that was made by the IOM? And I ask that because in there, several of the issues that we face in immigration are highlighted. And does the minister at this time, is the minister able to provide us at this time an indication of where we stand with immigration in general on this island? There seem to be ongoing consequences and follow-up actually to the BTA, yes, the Brooks Tower Agreement, where persons who received permits under that system that then eventually became permanent residents, and then as recently as 2023, a spouse of someone like that is admitted to the island on the basis of the spouse receiving a permanent residency because of having received a permit as part of the BTA. So when we look, do we have an overview of our immigration situation in terms of how many permanent residencies, how many temporary ones? What is it really out there? And you know, because of the measures that the French authorities took immediately following the recent incidents, some of them fatal on the French side, and the fact that they have put in a helicopter. And I asked myself, and I guess given our lack of resources, that even if this is in the pipeline, is not of something tomorrow. But I do know that before we were even country, there was a police helicopter on or for St. Martin. Any thinking, any desires, requests, or anything regarding, for example, a helicopter for the KPSM. I come to the Minister of ECYS and just would ask the Minister in this retreat by whatever name could very, and it was mentioned by the Minister in her presentation, but could very much attention be paid to the orange economy as an economic driver on St. Martin. And with respect to the national symbols, I heard the Minister of ECYS clearly in the preparation of a cultural script. And I ask if somehow that can become or that can evolve into a symbols catalog for St. Martin with our symbols, and where we can look at things like the naming of St. Martin and what do we call this island when we're talking about both sides of the island, you know, those kind of things, and proudly exhibit what our symbols are, whether it be our traditional clothing, cooking, whatsoever. If they're symbols, if we can catalog them. And then, Madam Chair Lady, I took note of the presentation, of the item in the presentation by the Minister of ECYS for the Dr. Martin Luther King School, and all the things that not only need to happen there, but will happen there. And from what I saw in the presentation, there was only an amount of $350,000 for CapEx for that project mentioned. And I wondered if that amount is to cover all of the things that were mentioned by the Minister for the Dr. Martin Luther King School. Madam Chair Lady, coming back to what I believe this government should do as we move from where we are today, a budget 2025, and we understand the state of the budget, as we move from a governing agreement to a governing accord, a governing program rather, and I want to ask that the ministers, in terms of capacity, take a strong position to receive from the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin assistance where it pertains to drafting legislation. And this should not only be for the legislation that regards the central bank. It should also be for legislation regarding taxes. And I want to keep it in the financial sphere, but not only the legislation that the central bank thinks is necessary. I want to encourage the Council of Ministers to make a hard claim together at BZCAR when it comes to capacity, especially legislative capacity, on our terms and what we need for legislation. I heard, I believe it was the Minister of Justice mentioning that the Minister of TIAT is working on a BAFPOL training. And I want to encourage the ministry or ministries who are doing that, make it bigger. We need controlling entities in this country. We have a waste ordinance. We have an existing wage ordinance that actually came from island territory days and is now a country ordinance. As old as that ordinance is, nothing that is taking place today in terms of garbage, in terms of wrecks on the road, in terms of anything on the public road that could be considered garbage or waste, is prohibited. These things are not allowed, and that's why earlier I stated that I cannot agree with the statement that St. Martin is a lawless country. Everything goes. No, we have laws. We don't have to make a waste ordinance today. Yes, of course, after so many years, some improvements and tweaking can take place. But just if we were to take that law and we were to have a team, that's why I mentioned what I did to the Minister of TIAT, to control on the basis of that law, and we use the Bastille-Liquor handhaving, I bet you, in less than no time, we will get persons understanding that there are consequences for this kind of illegal behavior. And yes, yeah, we gotta educate, and we gotta make aware all of that. But we gotta continue with that, but that does not mean that we can wait for that. Cleanliness is not something that we have to teach anyone. Our laws are there, and we need control. We need controllers, we need inspectors to make sure. Otherwise, I mean, persons and businesses are laughing at us with these laws.